Alright, welcome back to the Top Rogue podcast by Classic Roguecraft. I am your host Snow, and this week we have Fjeenzy, the rogue class lead of Progress, the current number 1 guild in clear speed for Blackwing Lair, with a clear time of 18 minutes and 51 seconds. So in this interview, I talked to Fjeenzy about his experience being the rogue class lead for Progress, whether he's going Darkmantle in Phase 5, his biggest rogue DPS tips, and we talk more in depth about exposed armor. We cover which guilds should be using it, who shouldn't be using it, and the pluses and minuses of the different exposed armor specs. His views on exposed armor isn't what a lot of you guys might expect, so give it a listen and you may save yourself a bit of time trying to chase this exposed armor meta when maybe you shouldn't be. As always, this content is brought to you by you guys. If you love my free rogue guides, there's even more guides and content available to Twitch subs. Once per week, I add an extra video guide for my Twitch subs covering heavily requested rogue topics in more detail. We've covered topics such as in-depth broodlord positioning, active trinket DPS calculations, and pet trinket raid tutorials. So if you want to help support Classic Roguecraft and get yourself bonus guides at the same time, head over to twitch.tv/snowby and hit that subscribe button. You find all your bonus guides in the Twitch sub channel of the Classic Roguecraft Discord. And by the way, even if you aren't a Twitch sub, feel free to join our super active Discord linked in the description below. We have over 3,600 members currently, and I'm in there all day answering questions and theory crafting with the other rogues. Start with the basics then. When did you get into WoW? How did you start playing World of Warcraft?
Well, I've played WoW since Europe release in 2005, since basically the day that came out. I've never really had any breaks. I stopped playing retail just now before Classic, so I've never really touched a private server in my life, apart from maybe a TBC one for fun a few years back, but I've never played private Classic, so this is kind of new to me. I did used to raid the hardcore raid back in Classic. We did kill Kel'Thuzad, top 90, I think, back in real vanilla. But I mean that kind of play is like, it's not really comparable to today's knowledge and stuff. But that's something most people know.
Okay, so wow, so you've been playing without a break since the original start of WoW. Which is, I don't know many people that have played WoW that long without a single break, actually.
More or less, I should say. I probably took a break after, at the end of Cataclysm, as in when we killed Deathwing. I took a break, as in I didn't really play actively. And I, for the first time in my life, I swapped guilds as well and started playing less hardcore. But yeah, apart from that, I haven't really had any huge breaks. And I just stopped retail now when Classic came out. So I guess I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing though. Something you should brag about or not.
Oh, the whole. Well, I mean, why did you stop retail? I guess is the question, and make the jump to Classic, because I've always wanted to kind of look at retail, but every time I look at retail, if you didn't play the 500 expansions in between, like TBC, Raptor, Lich King, and like where retail is, there's so much stuff going on now that like. It just feels like I'm lost anytime I try to jump into retail.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, for sure. They bloat the game quite a lot. Like there's so many things in retail. I have no good answer to why I started playing Classic. I guess, I mean, for me, I started playing in Progress as a social because I have many friends in leadership from back in the days, as in back in TBC and Wrath. Like the many people in leadership here are people I played with back in the days. So they basically like asked if I was going to play, and I said, yeah, probably, but just casually. And yeah, that didn't really. I started loving the game again when I started playing Classic, compared to what I did to retail. So it was like I had no plans of quitting retail when Classic came. It just happened naturally.
Interesting. So.
I just don't like the retail kind of WoW is like, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy logging on for raids 3 times a week anymore. So I've decided like it's probably better to do what I think is funny.
Yeah.
as a classic.
I mean, for me, why I stopped playing WoW originally was because it started feeling like a chore, right? Retail, the more they developed and bloated it, the more it felt like every time you logged on, you had to do your daily quests and then you had to do all of these tasks. It started becoming this like checklist you had to log in and do all the time. And I guess in Classic, I
No,
don't feel that.
it's a bit like you have loads of chores to do in that sense in classic as well, but I guess they are more up to you
Yeah,
what you want to
optional.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
they kind of like define you as a player in classic, while in retail you kind of have to farm X and X for reputation, etc. And I don't know, it just doesn't appeal to me. There are many things about it. It's not that I don't like retail. I think retail is a great game as well. I can't really explain my personal feeling about it. I just find it more fun to play classic. Also, I have real life friends who started playing classic, which is like it's a huge bump for me in motivation. I think it's really fun to play with them as well.
okay. So you mentioned you had friends in the leadership of Progress from back in the day. So is this people that like maybe you were doing really hardcore guild raiding back in like the first run of World of Warcraft then?
Yeah, I played with the main tank in progress right now is called Windforce. We used to play in vanilla together in security, a guild in Europe. So we have long history. Apart from that, he's not in leadership though. But apart from that, I played with the guild master from TBC and onwards. Um, and we did used to do some hardcore raiding indeed, back in Wrath and TBC. So yeah.
Okay, so I mean, it's kind of an interesting contrast because when I talk to Nether, his whole history is just all private server stuff, but yours is all just
Yeah.
you've never even touched a private server at all, right?
Never, no, no, never. I don't know anything coming into this private community. It's a pretty big community with speedruns and stuff. Like I had close to zero idea what speedrunning meant when I started playing Classic WoW now, and now I know most about it, and I think it's really funny. But yeah, I had unlike Nether, which the interview I listened to, I have zero of his experience pretty much. I'm completely fresh in this speedrunning community.
Huh. So is a lot of Progress private server, or is it kind of a mix of both, like non-private and
Hmm.
private?
Top of my head, I would say it's about maybe 75% private player servers and 25% fresh noobs like me.
Huh, interesting. So it's still dominated by the private
Might
servers.
be, yeah, I would say so. And they also have like mixed background. They don't all come from. I mean, Progress history. I don't really know all of Progress history either, but they seem to have been like different guilds with different leadership throughout. Similarly to what Nether explained about apes, like they have been around for a while, but with like different leadership.
Okay, so just different iterations. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
how did you get into Rogue? Like, why Rogue? Because as someone who's been playing WoW this long, then since the start,
Yeah,
you must have played practically every class by now. So when you jumped back into Classic, why did you pick Rogue?
because that was my first character.
Ah, okay. So you just
Simple
recreated the whole
answer.
experience from start again.
Yeah, that was about it. I used to play. I had 4 level 60s back in vanilla. It was a rogue, followed by a warrior, followed by a mage, and lastly a priest. And I kind of wanted to play. I considered like I used to play rogue back until I think I rerolled warrior and started tanking after Nefarian died in real vanilla. But I kind of didn't want to, because I don't know, I spoke some to my friends, and then they said like, yeah, well, warrior is a lot of work. Like you kind of want to rank if you want decent like gear and stuff. And I knew with like my work schedule, there's no way I can do rank 14 or barely even rank 10. So I kind of decided like, well, I'll just play the second best then, and be happy with it, because I had no real intentions, like I said, to hardcore raid or to speed run or anything. But
Yeah.
it kind of just happened. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I want to ask. How did you then end up as the class lead for Progress as Rogues when you started off playing casual?
Well, I don't know. It's funny story, but a funny story that I can't really share. No, but it's like I guess they know me from like way back, and they know I've always had a officer or leadership position, and they figured I was fit for the role. And like all the rogues that were in the guild then had no interest in being class leader, so it just ended up on my table, more or less.
Okay, yeah. So I
That's
guess
the
they
that's
just
the
saw
easy
that like
explanation.
you were responsible enough, or seemingly responsible enough to do all the work.
Yeah. I have no idea what their thought process was behind that, but yeah, that's where I am
Okay.
right now.
So what does the job entail anyway? What does a class lead in progress even do?
Well, you can do like I think it kind of differs from class leader to class leader. For example, the newly appointed warrior class leader like has so many people to monitor. So I would guess his work is a little bit more general than many others that don't really have that many. Because warrior we run like 25 warriors in our core. So that job is a little bit bigger than for example, say warlocks or rogues for that matter. But when it comes to me, I don't know. I just handle loot. I scout through logs whenever I feel like it, and see if I find any major weird things. I don't usually like pinpoint players like you did this and this wrong, because I kind of trust everyone to know their class perfectly, and I'm pretty sure, and I know that I have rogues in my guild that are way more experienced with rogue than I am. So it's not really my position to teach people how to play. I'm more like I sit discussing with I sit and discuss with the other people in the leadership, raid leader, etc., and find out like what do we do in suppression room, and what do we how many rogues do we want for this and that, and what is our biz list, etc., etc.
Okay, so
That would be
yours
the
is more of
and
a
I also handle loot.
more coordination and loot then, I guess.
Yeah, more coordination and loot more than say tell people what to do. That's not really a thing in progress. Everyone knows what to do. If people have like questions, of course they can approach me, but it rarely happens.
Okay, so while
We
we're
have
on the topic of loot then, because I was gonna ask this later, but how do you guys handle the gearing as far as daggers versus swords as an alliance guild? Because imagine you guys do it differently as alliance because of all the human ratios, right? There's so many people that probably want swords. So how do you guys deal with all that?
we have when it comes to like should be added, we have many rankers in progress, which Nether I think stated as well. We do have many rankers, especially from the warrior squad. So basically having them rank gave us the opportunity to give weapons to players that didn't rank. And I don't know like real numbers, but I would say it's like maybe 40% of the melee squad has rank 14, somewhere around there, 30% maybe. So we have had a lot of free weapons, and we've also been very lucky with weapons, I should say, aside from Maladat maybe. So we basically in our rogue squad we also have 2 rank 14s, so weapons for them has not been an issue. But the rest of us kind of just got what we wanted. I mean, I used to play daggers because basically all warriors needed CTS, and I got CTS like 5 days ago or something. So I'm finally making the transition into swords again. But basically we just give people what they want, and at the moment I think we only really have 1 or maybe 2 rogues that wants to play dagger. So basically the majority of all rogues are playing swords, and all of us kind of have good weapons for it. We still need 1 CTS on a rogue to finalize that.
Whoa!
From the
No,
human rogues at least.
two CTSs when my night elf male rogue joins.
Yeah, of course. We'll sort that out. Aren't they unique though? They are. Unlucky.
Okay. How about AQ? What are your thoughts on AQ as far as you just said that you play daggers and now you're transitioning to swords. I assume that's just because of the obvious benefits of being dagger rogue in Black Mullah, with the whole situation with Veil being really advantageous.
Not really. Like speedrun wise, it doesn't really matter if you have 4 rogues that play swords and do like what 300-400 DPS less on Veil. It really doesn't matter much. I would say in the daggers are stronger in the common sense of looking at logs, right? Like, as in, sure, if you do a full parse run, you will not get very high on total DPS unless you play daggers, because, as you say, Veil is a very big portion of it. But all in all, I still think that that swords are very strong in BVL. It's not like daggers are super favorable on any boss really, apart from Veil. Maybe Razor Gore, the really short kills, but I would say they go pretty even.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna quote you on
sure.
that because I get asked that so much about people telling
Yeah,
me
but I
daggers
mean,
are swords, and
in
yeah,
general, right? If you do a speed run, overall boss DPS, it's like it's the term called the boss whoring or something of the sort, right? If you play daggers just to get really high numbers because of Veil, I mean, I don't think that's huge. I think swords is even stronger on most trash packs, so I think it kind of goes even. Daggers work; they're perfectly fine on trashing BVL as well, but I do prefer swords in speedruns especially. But daggers has gotten the reputation of being better simply because they parse higher. But I think it's a pretty black and white view of it. I think you need to put some gray in it and see that they are very even.
let's. I'm trying to organize these questions a bit better, but let's jump back to the guild as a whole. How do you feel about the whole alliance advantage? Do you feel there's that big advantage? Well, I mean, everyone knows that salvation, and I've seen alliance pull with paladin bubbles have been very helpful as well. Is there anything you feel
Mm-hmm.
that Horde actually has the advantage on?
Again, I don't really come from a private server speedrunning community, and I've never touched Horde in a classic set. So I can't really speak from own experience or performance on Horde side because I never played it. But I would, if I'm guess gaming, I would say that they have a bit of an advantage on, say, trash, where getting aggro isn't really as big, and also on longer fights, say Nefarian, where basically the Nether spoke of the, I think it was Nether that spoke of the ramp up time where Alliance pretty much beats Horde in the start of fights because we can start nuking earlier without being afraid of aggro. I would say on longer fights, Horde do like take over, and they do have higher DPS in general if they have tanks that can maintain their aggro and not get too many parries, etc. But I do feel like it looks like the Alliance do have a higher advantage when it comes to speedrunning. I also don't really know how. I don't think anyone really knows. But coming forward to Nax and AQ, which are both way longer raids than BVL, and also Kings scaling even more with stats, I do feel Alliance might get even higher advantage in AQ and Nax. But that is of course just guess gaming.
Okay. Speaking of AQ, have you had any considerations on how swords and daggers will perform in AQ 40? Do you think one spec might be more dominant, or do you think it's still gonna stay fairly even? Because we know that Death Sting is a big DPS upgrade for the dagger rogues.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you
Yeah.
feel it's gonna
Yeah.
work out?
I'm not really too big into numbers all the time, even though I do get bullied in our guild for being a simulation nope. But I still think, like, on stims I would guess daggers will be slightly higher, with Death Sting of course. But I don't know, I feel there are too many bosses in AQ where daggers might get slightly punished in order to win in a speedrun scenario. But I'm still thinking, like, on logs, on if you go for all-star rankings, etc. I still think daggers will be the preferred choice, because I think if you get a really good log as a dagger, it will be better than a really good log as swords. But it's also going to come down to 0.5 procs, right? So it's gonna be more of a RNG fiesta than we've seen in BVL. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, interesting. As far as AQ goes, are you guys preparing any nature resist for Huhuran, or are you just gonna just nuke it down like what I assume a lot of guilds are going to do?
We are preparing some nature rests, but my personal thought is probably that you're not gonna really need much, especially not on maybe the first few weeks, but not in a speedrun scenario. Perhaps only the really best items, but just like Nether said, he said it better than I could. But sub 30%, it's gonna be a 3-second enrage timer, and then she starts spewing bolts. I am pretty certain that a pre-pop nature protection potion and a second nature protection potion will be more than enough for a fast kill.
Okay.
Cool. But the few first kills, yeah, maybe probably on the first one at least, we will be equipping fire and natures.
Okay. Now, as far as you said, the fights are going to go longer, and because obviously AQ fights go longer in general. What are your thoughts on the whole flasking for heals and mana return thing that has started to crop up now? Does Progress do any of that, or are you guys planning to do any of that?
As in Titan's flask on melee, or?
Yeah, you are. As in like in I think it was the Onslaught kill where they popped a bunch of mana pots, mana flasks just to get back all their mana.
Oh, I can't speak for that because I don't have mana, and I don't really dig into the healers or casters during speedruns, but I feel it's maybe a little bit redundant. I'm not sure. Like, I don't think you're gonna see it in AQ, at least in that sense.
Okay. Well,
I might be completely wrong about this. I just don't know about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. I'm not sure how how your leadership runs in Progress, but I'm curious because you said you've been playing since forever, pretty much. Wow. How do you deal with the whole burnout issue and keeping the raids running? Is that actually even an issue for Progress? Because you guys have such a long history. I guess you just have an unlimited amount of apps all the time.
It's an issue for all guilds. I would say more so on higher level because you just do more. And I don't know, like if I had a rogue that approached me and said I am beginning to feel burnt out, I would of course advise him to tone down. Maybe if he plays on an alt, stop raiding on the alt. Just focus your main for a while and see if you get the motivation back. But we see people taking breaks. Of course, it's more so during the summer, but it's nothing different from any other guild, I think. We suffer from burnouts as well. Every one of us.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I guess you guys just recruit then to. When do you recruit then? I guess. Do you just fill in extra raids and then slot people in if someone burns out? I guess.
If it would happen, yeah, we would of course recruit from that class or from within the guild. We usually have socials as well that are capable of stepping into at least our second and third raid if we need that.
Okay. Oh, second and third raid. So
it's
how
never
many
really
raids does Progress run?
Well, we run 2 official raids and we run a third social / alt raid, which is separate from the 2 first.
Okay. Let's talk about the buff situation because I know Alliance has it a little bit differently. Do you feel that this has been asked by a few people actually? They asked me to ask you. Do you feel that Alliance rogues can compete without the rend buff, because the rend buff is a huge pain in the butt to get as an Alliance?
No, they can't. No, they can't.
Not at all.
The fast answer is no. I mean, 15% attack speed is half a slice and dice constantly up, so it's not comparable. Of course, you can get a really lucky RNG spree. I mean, you've seen like Just WoW, etc., getting new records without DMF. It is more than possible, but in general, no. I would say you need VCP as an Alliance rogue in order to compete.
Any tips for rogues who need to get WCB, the rend buff? So just for backstory for people who might be listening, the rend buff is mostly Horde only and hardcore Alliance guilds, because to get the buff on Alliance, you basically have to be mind controlled in Orgrimmar or the Crossroads to get the actual buff at the time when the rend buff goes out. And the rend buff has a cooldown where as soon as the person turns in, it pretty much goes off right away. except if you're on the crossroads. So how do you do this, and can you share it without spoiling any secrets of how you guys do it? I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a wide known fact how to do it. Like either you find a good spot in Orgrimmar and you have a second account and you cap yourself, as in you basically mind control yourself from your second account, or you have someone else do it for you. The spots you can, I mean, use your imagination, pretty much. But I've also seen people do it with their own mind control cap, as in you go with your own mind control cap and you pray for a backfire and you mind control a guard in crossroads.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, okay. So, yeah, someone messaged me about this. I was curious about that. So it is doable then. I guess
Yeah,
you need a bit
it
of
is.
luck to backfire then.
Yeah, exactly. Reversed bad luck, so to
Yeah,
speak.
reverse
Because
that luck.
if you get capped by a horde, then you kind of pray for to not get a backfire. But you can of course do it this way as well. I probably wouldn't do it myself. It would be too frustrating to stealth up there yourself. You kind of also, if you do the second thing, you kind of, if you have many buffs, you know that they will be ticking because you will have so many attempts you need to do in order to
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. Just to expand for the people listening, basically what he's talking about is you get a gnomish mind control cap, you mind control an NPC and hope that it backfires and mind controls you to make him your pet, or to make yourself his pet, so that you get the rend buff when it goes out. So it requires like some RNG to work in your favor there.
A little bit too much RNG for my
Yes.
flavor, I would say.
Man.
But I mean, the best thing is if you have a horde friend, a horde priest friend who can 100% mind control you.
Yeah, I guess that covers the general raid questions. Let's talk about rogues. What are the differences you see in Alliance versus Horde rogue strategy? Because it's kind of not a one size fits all. Different raids, different races, different like Alliance versus Horde. Everything has a different way to implement into the game, and there's some differences, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
how do you feel the differences weigh out as Alliance versus Horde? Besides like swing timers, for example.
Yeah, I had that swing timer discussion yesterday on Discord as well, with some people, and there are people who highly praise swing timers. I would probably do so myself if I was Horde, but as you say, like the difference between Horde and Alliance, I would say is huge on the swing timer issue. I would say that as alliances, if you play alliance as daggers, it's completely useless to even have a swing timer. Like it doesn't really add anything. Even if you run with the Hand of Justice as a dagger rogue, that 2% chance is just not worth monitoring a swing timer for. It just isn't. As swords for alliance, of course you should have a swing timer and you should try to look at it outside of adrenaline rush and T and the Renataki, but I still don't think it's huge. I don't think it's gonna make or break many things. But I know probably several alliance rogues are gonna disagree with me on this one. But for me personally, when you have these really fast kills, I would suggest, especially new rogues that just begins the start playing rogue, to basically look at the swing timer as your last thing as alliance, because it's not going to differ much, especially on shorter boss kills. It's going to be very, very minimal. But on Horde, yeah, it's a completely different story with Wind Fury together with Sword Spec. Even as Dagger Rogue on Horde, it's gonna be big.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, while we're
So
on
I
the
would say
topic,
Alliance Rogue is like if I can add one more thing there, it's probably that Alliance Rogue is like, considering you don't really look at your swing timer as much, or if anything at all, and considering you have Salvation, I would say Alliance Rogue is probably a lot easier to play than a Horde Rogue.
interesting. So, how would you look at optimizing your play as a rogue then on Alliance? Since swing timer was one of the big things Nether was talking about, but he's a Horde rogue. So on Alliance rogue,
Mm-hmm.
what is the main thing you look at then? Rotations?
Slice and dice uptime is probably the biggest noob trap, which is something I had to focus myself as well in the beginning. Like, you don't want to refresh a slice and dice on a boss so that you have plenty of seconds left when the boss dies. Then you know you probably messed up. That's the biggest thing, I think. There's also, of course, small things like on Veil, like that you as a Dagger rogue know that you don't eviscerate unless the boss turns, if you tank it the way we do. You don't basically want to waste any slice and dice uptime. You don't want to refresh it if not needed, etc. Basically, I would say as an Alliance rogue, you need to learn your guild's kill timers. Once you learn your guild's kill timers, I think your DPS is gonna probably increase by the biggest margin compared to everything else. Because that's when you learn how to basically properly do your rotation. That would be my biggest thing for Alliance rogues.
Interesting. So yours actually it lines up pretty much exactly what Nether said. Then, because besides him being Horde and caring about swing timers, he said the same thing, right? That he looks a lot about not wasting slice and dice uptime.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing, and of course using your cooldowns properly as well. Doing really high parses as being number one in the world, or doing like the biggest overall boss DPS parse in BVL is not really always the best thing to do, especially not in a speedrun, for example, where basically you need to get as many, I think Nether spoke about this as well, but get as many adrenaline rushes and flurries out in the right time as humanly possible. I think this is much more important than like perfectly time it, because you've seen people talk about, like, lining up cooldowns with Crusader procs, etc. I'm a big speaker of agility on offhand, for example. I don't want double Crusader as a rogue. I don't see the benefit at all. I think that's one thing less to worry about, because if you start like looking at double Crusader procs in order to pop adrenaline rush and flurry, you're gonna run into many problems, I think, along the way.
Okay, well, you kind of answered my next question a little bit there. I was going to ask what you thought about the RNG elements, because I know some rogues go for it because they want to go for that godly RNG pass, and some other rogues don't like it. Like Jeswu purposely doesn't use any Crusader, not even on his main hand, because he hates RNG.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you feel about it? You don't like RNG?
I don't like RNG at all. I mean, if you look at just Wu, he shits on pretty much everyone, and he doesn't play with Crusader at all. I used to play with Crusader on main hand because I just think it's better, and I don't PvP at all. So for me, it's really no big difference. There isn't much RNG into a Crusader on main hand, but putting it on off hand, it's another deal, and you kind of don't want to sit there and fish for the double Crusader procs, because it's never going to happen in a realistic scenario. You can't expect it to happen. And considering all the short fights, yeah, you might get super lucky and you get like a double proc on your first 2 hits, and then you're gonna probably do a lot more DPS than if you didn't. But like the odds of it happening is just too slim for me to care about. I prefer the agility, and you could even argue that agility is even more RNG because it can add even more crit, So I just don't like procs, not much.
Okay, cool. So we're in the same thought there. But I assume you're still going Darkmantle, or are you not going Darkmantle?
I am going Darkmantle. I PM'd you about it as well. I followed the little discussion that blossomed on.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting one.
Yeah, with like not being worth for Horde. I don't know numbers. I'm not a math guy in general, but for Alliance rogues, it's 100% gonna be worth using, at least until you get 2.5, which is gonna be rather late in a guild like ours. So I'm going.
You guys have like 500 warriors, so.
Yeah, around that number. Yeah. I think that warriors should get prio on at least two of the items for what is it? Shoulders and legs at least.
Yeah. Okay, so you said you're not a numbers guy, but how much time do you actually spend any time optimizing your gearing? What do you do there as far as your gearing? And is it something that you view as really that important in the grand scheme of things, when world buffs and in-game performance tends to have much more impact than the actual gear worn in a lot of cases?
Yeah, I do get bullied in progress for being the simmer, or like speaking of sims, etc. I think sims are vital, because if without sims you probably missed a lot of things that could be really big. So I am a big fan of sims, but I'm also a big fan of not thinking black and white, just saying like, oh look, daggers sim a lot higher than swords, therefore it must be better, because it's a completely different play style. There's so many other elements that get put into play that you can't really control. It's the exact same thing with trinkets, right? Some trinkets might sim lower, but they might still be better in the grand scheme of things. I've seen sims where Renataki pretty much outsims Earthstrike, and I have a hard time seeing it on longer fights in AQ, for example. I just think Earthstrike is going to be stronger because you get the burst when you want the burst. Like if I'm I think sims are important, but I do think that focusing on realistic gameplays is a lot more important.
Okay, speaking of trinkets,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you. So basically, you look at the sims as kind of a guide, but you don't want it to override what the common sense of how you expect a fight to play out.
Exactly. Like you can see, for example, bloodfang is a good example. Like the full bloodfang is bis, right, for sword rogues. Kind of depends on procs. On really short fights, do you really want to rely on that proc to maybe say a 13-second razor gore fights? Do you really want to rely on getting like 2 bloodfang procs in order for that to become better than having the offset?
Yeah, did progress divide the bloodfang within the sword rogues and dagger rogues? Because I know that's how Nether did it. I don't know how you guys did it.
No, we tried to stack it on me. We basically put we put a few items prior on other rogues, and I was like, yeah, I'll just take bloodfang, right? And I ended up with 6 out of 8 bloodfang for after the first run when we got our first PVL run. But then I didn't get my 7th and 8th part until maybe 3 weeks ago.
Wait, really?
So that kind of backfired pretty hard, because we tried to do it because we wanted to check the bloodfang proc in our raid environment, right? But no, it kind of ended up in everyone having 6 out of 8 in the end.
Okay. I had no idea that you didn't have bloodfang for so long, because I remember you posting in the Discord that you had 6 out of 8 after that like first week or whatever it is. So I just kind of assumed that you finished it.
But nope, I got belt maybe 6 weeks ago, and then I got bracers 3 weeks ago, something around those lines.
Yeah, that's kind of the RNG, I guess it goes, because that's kind of what happened in my guild as well. We only just finished our first 8 of 8 last week, because we couldn't get the braces to drop for until like literally last week.
I still think only we had like maybe 2 or 3 bracers in raid 1, perhaps maybe 4 in total with raid 2 as well. It's really RNG.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, I guess. But
which is nice with AQ, where you get 100% set parts every week. It's going to be really
exactly.
nice.
Yeah. How do you feel it go, by the way? What is Progress doing about the whole idol situation? Because we know that the tokens are basically 100%, so it's not going to be an issue for everyone to pick up full tier 2.5. But the idols that go with the tokens are kind of a little bit rare in some cases. Is Progress going to buy them?
We'll probably buy a few, but it's definitely going to be the bottleneck for most guilds when it comes to gearing in. Because like gear parts are going to be huge, right? But they're going to be swimming in them, especially if you run more than one raid. But idols, yeah, I think it's going to be a bottleneck. We'll see. We don't know about the drop rates in Classic yet, 100%, I think so.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting.
I guess let's talk about what a lot of people want to talk about, exposed armor. So this will be interesting to see how you contrast with Nether on the exposed armor debate. Let's just start with when did you guys start running it, and how has your experience been overall with exposed armor?
If I remember correctly, we did it not for the first speedrun in Molten Core, but we started doing so maybe second or third. Well, my thoughts about it is like it's mandatory for a speedrunning guild that stacks melee, because it's a very, very big DPS increase if you run like we do, closer to 28 or 30 physical DPSers. Again, I'm not a maths guy, but like looking at it, you don't really need a degree in science. You have like about a 5.5% increase for a warrior, right? From having expose up over Sunder. Little less for a rogue, but still pretty much around 5%. So you're gonna have a huge gain in DPS, around 2,000, maybe 2.5k raid DPS with exposed armor up over Sunder armor for the time being. So it is very important that if you run a speedrunning guild with plenty of melee, you need exposed armor, pretty much. That's the easy general consensus.
As far as the numbers go, so this is something you PM me about as well, is that you agree with most of what Nether said, but you disagreed with the DPS loss as far as the rogue who's using it. What are your thoughts there? Because the numbers that were calculated by Simon in the rogue Discord were 80 to 120 DPS. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing that those numbers being only that, because, for example, if you play an exposed armor rogue, you need to get exposed up before you get your slice up, right? So that's going to be 5 points you spend on an exposed before getting a 1 point slice up. So in general, I think, of course, it depends on what spec you're playing. I would say that Nether's numbers probably added up a bit more in Molten Core for us, where I used to expose, and I exposed as combat, just a general combat sword spec. But in BVL, where bosses basically, where we figured out we kind of want to get exposed up as fast as possible, right? Because there's going to be a big number increase on having exposed up after 4 globals or 3 globals even, compared to if you have it up after 5. It's going to be a pretty big difference in the long run, right? You can probably shave off maybe 15 seconds on a speed run, just getting exposed up really fast. Okay. So if you play a different spec, for example, the specs that our rogues and our raid leader brought up, probably everyone has seen it by now, that we run a Hemo rogue in BVL for that purpose, Hemo Seal Fate. If you play it correctly, you can get Seal Fate up. I mean, with Seal Fate, you can get exposed up very fast. But
just
with that spec, of course,
is that like an ambush Seal Fate, where you ambush and then swap in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you ambush and you get the extra combo point from initiative, you have a very, very fast. If you're lucky, you get it up in 2 globals, right? You have a 3 point. Or is it? Am I dreaming now? Do you get 3 point if you go with initiative?
Yeah, with initiative.
If you crit an ambush, you create an ambush together with initiative proc, you get 3 points in one ambush, and you also after that you can either cold blood sinister strike or hope for RNG crit on Hemo. Best case scenario, you have a exposed up after 3 seconds on the boss. I mean, we obviously don't rely on this, that we expect this to happen, but it can happen, and that's super nice. But even if you don't have it exposed, if you play with Seal Fate, it's still gonna be faster most of the time. Should you have some crits, okay. But of course the DPS goes down a lot more in the long run. Okay, especially with the Hemo spec.
Yeah. So your thought is that for hardcore guild, it pretty much just should be Seal Fate Hemo then for the exposed armor rogue?
No, I don't necessarily think so. I think Seal Fate swords, as in just like a mixed spec, as in you play assassination with combat talents with flurry, is just as viable. The reason we run Hemo is not necessarily the Hemo debuff. That's kind of minor, but more like the utility that it brings in suppression room with a really fast rogue. So I probably wouldn't argue for a Hemo spec in AQ or Nux, not ever.
Okay, so you're not so fast on the spec then, but you do prefer Seal Fate over like just a combat with exposed armor.
And I do to some extent, yeah. Especially when you run these really short bosses that exist in BVL, I think it's preferable, yeah. Okay. However, if you run it in AQ, I'm not sure I'm going to have the same opinion. I might just say that regular combat spec with improved expose is just as good.
Someone in the Rogue Discord brought up improved kidney shot, which was an interesting thought. Because if you're running that Seal Fate rogue, you might be able to get the talent points to try to fit that in somewhere. Have you done anything thinking regarding the improved kidney shot as well? Which for the people at home, basically improved kidney shot adds, I think it's 9% more damage over the duration of your kidney shot.
It is 9%. I think 3%.
Yeah, 3% per talent, I think it is.
Well, no, we haven't really done any practical testing with it right now. I haven't, at least, but I know for a fact that private server rogues played around with it. But that kind of requires you to be a Seal Fate rogue, right? And I don't know. It's I think it's minor for now, but I might change my mind on that as well.
Okay. So before we go back to more exposed armor stuff, since we're on the AQ topic, you said in one of my streams, I think you said you don't regard Badge of the Swarmguard that highly. Is that still the case for you for trash and bosses?
No. I mean, it's probably gonna be useful for warriors and trash, yeah, for sure. But if you run with the exposed armor rogue, it's completely pointless to use on bosses.
Okay, so
unless they've gotten the maths wrong and we can't like close to zero armor the bosses.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But
so similar.
It's not going to be used on bosses.
Similar thinking to Nether then, as far as it'll be great for trash, but kind of trash for bosses. Unless I guess you're again a guild that isn't running improved exposed armor, then you should see a good increase there.
Yeah, for sure. Like the warriors in our raid 3 where we don't really run exposed armor ever. It's
warriors and rogues. Let's not forget the poor rogues.
Yeah, sure. But I still think warriors should have pre on it, for sure.
Okay. Where do you feel the DPS loss evens out then? So you feel that how important do you feel the DPS loss of that rogue running exposed armor is? Because the math kind of gets complicated because you have to think about the DPS loss of the rogue, but then the DPS gain of the raid as well, and it changes based on how many melee you're running. And
if the rogue is not comfortable playing a Seal Fate spec, which is, I mean, it's a lot more. Oh, what's the word? It's a lot more interactive. Like you need to really pay attention to your crits, right? And because you can't count like one Sinister Strike, one Hemo. You can get crits, and you need to be on point getting that expose up. If you don't get it up in good time, if you overcap on points, which has happened, it kind of isn't worth it anymore. Like you kind of need to be really comfortable with spec in order to gain something from it, right? I would say in general, I would say the normal combat spec that Nether proposed for exposed armor is probably best for absolutely most guilds as it is now, because it doesn't really matter for most guilds when you get the exposed armor up, as in it doesn't really matter if it's up after 3 or 4 seconds or 6 or 7 seconds.
Okay, so on the question of the rogue doing it, how do you feel is the best way to go about choosing it? I guess on progress it doesn't matter as much because all your rogues are probably really good rogues. But for the average guild, how do you think they should go about picking the improved exposed armor rogue? Because there's the thought that you pick the worst DPS rogue to do it, but then if you pick the worst DPS rogue in a casual guild, how are his good rotations going to be? Are you going to trust him to actually do it properly versus another rogue?
I think we've had this discussion as well on Discord a few times, where I've basically said that if you play in an average guild which don't really speedrun, if no one wants to expose, then don't expose, right? Because basically the downside, like if you have say 10 to 15 physical DPSers in a raid, having that extra 300 armor gone, that extra 5% for those physical DPS is not very big, right? It's not going to make or break anything in your run. I would go so far as to say as no one that isn't speedrunning should ever use exposed armor, because it only really complicates things for the tanks. It only really makes it more boring for most rogues, unless you have a rogue which is like, yeah, I really, really want to put up that debuff. Like, I think it's super fun. I mean, then by all means, go ahead.
Any rogue like that.
But if you have that attitude in a guild which is like awesome, I don't think the spec really matters, right? it's not gonna matter if you get it up after 3 seconds. You do it fucking pitch point perfect, or if you do it after 6 seconds. It really doesn't matter.
Okay, so I mean that's nice to know, so that I can quote you on that in the future. Basically, you're of the thinking then similar to me, where I just think in general it's just not something guilds should even really worry about, because the gain and the complications of the entire thing just it doesn't seem worth it overall.
Yeah. I mean, I would in most cases I would probably just say for literally 99.99% of all guilds, like just play whatever combat EA spec you want. It doesn't really matter. Just play whatever you want. If you really want to, but it's not necessary. Like it isn't. You don't have to play with exposed or improved exposed armor at all unless you stack melee. I think it can be more counterproductive than it can be productive in many cases if you don't know what you're doing. I think the exposed armor discussion is what most people ask about recently, and I think I hope I made myself clear on that, on where I stand on it. I don't think it's something that people should worry sick over. It's very minor unless you stack melee. Realistically, I don't think it matters much if you play combat or Seal Fate.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, thanks for your time. I guess that's about it. I guess I'll see you around. But you're in the Discord, so
For sure.
we chat all the time anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much for the time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care. Have a nice one.
Yeah, have a good one, man.